people with a sense of their own power. And this change cannot be calculated or allowed for. But in our software, we allow for the unknown. And that's where I kept thinking, ooh, something's going to come along and it's just going to kick the powers that be right in the butt. They're just not expecting it. And this is it. What they're not expecting is where it's going to go from here and how it's going to morph.
Yeah, who knows how the dominoes are going to fall now.
I don't think of it that way because, look, the dominoes, and we have to be careful here. You're dealing with a radical linguist, but the dominoes references a specific subcontext, which is the domino theory, and that language referenced a specific viewpoint from the powers that be that they used to sell to get our guys to go out and kill little brown people in Vietnam, because they were a proxy for one of the dominoes, and it was all bogus to begin with. It was yet another bogus war, like all their bogus wars. And so, no, it won't be dominoes like that. What they have happened here has to be described more like a brush fire, and a spark has been lit. We've got 7 billion dry strands of grass, so dry that the merest hint of heat gets them all inflamed and whipped up. And those 7 billion are about to go full-on flaming out. And a brush fire like that, as the people in Australia will tell you, does not spread linearly or following any kind of a ladder diagram. It's not dominoes. It's a run for your lifetime because it's all going up at once.
When you have these ideas, is there a moral value to them? Is there ever good and evil, or is this just things that happen? Is it ever defined that way?
This way, okay. Yes, there is a moral value, but a moral value has to be recognized as an opinion. In the real course of events, in reality, you can say, I can give you an example that will answer the question, and it'll even be meaningful, but is not fully comprehensive. But there's, for the ordinary individual, everything that happens to them is either a blessing or a curse. They either stub their toe or they win $1 million, and you can easily differentiate between them. For the person that steps out of the idea of what I think of as the common consensus reality, that other people might call the 5 sense reality, etc., when you start considering the universe in a different way, you recognize that everything is a challenge. Therefore, you have a certain moral viewpoint, but the idea of imposing the labels of good and evil on it, or good and bad even, defeats the purpose of moving on and getting beyond that, and getting beyond those particular labels. They don't really solve anything, and they're very divisive, and they frequently blind you to the solution to the problem. So yes, there is a moral imperative, but it doesn't. It's not so shallow as to involve itself with hard linear thinking like that.
Okay, that's no, I like that. And actually, well, I read a lot of different books, and your information here kind of fits into some of the stuff I've read. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. Now, I do have another question along with the populations you define. Can you tell us what the space goat farts are?
Space? What was that? I'm
Space,
sorry.
I was
Space
working, bear in mind
farts.
that these things grew kind of organically, okay? And so here I am working along in 97 and 98, and I'm seeing that, I was working for markets at the time, basically looking for specific market-related activity. And I started seeing these stuff about the Earth, and so I separated that out, and the Terra entity grew, and so then eventually I wised up and saw, there's all these populous entity things I need to split out. And I noticed there was a distinct difference between the North American populace and the rest of the populace on the planet. And I came to the idea as to why that was occurring, but in any event, in about 2002, I noticed a real lack, a need for some place to put all of the archetypes that relate to the officially unknown, the actually unknown, and the officially denied stuff. There's all kinds of stuff that, our government denies, yet we must deal with as part of our reality. And just because government denies it, in fact, it's not only a reason to pay attention to it, it's probably a certitude then that just because they are denying it, that it's true. And so I needed a bucket, so to speak, a set group that I could put all this in. And then it dawned on me, I know what I'll do is I'll name this. And we also had lots of it related to space and aliens and all this kind of stuff government would rather you not even think about. And so I thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll go through here and I'll take the highest level of descriptors I've got relative to this new thing, and that this new, I was going to call it officially denied, or, the X factor, and that's too like TV-ish. And so I let the entity name itself. And what was in there was a huge chunk that was related to space, a huge chunk that was related to the Illuminati, whose favorite critter is the goat, and a huge chunk that was related to scandals and stink. So I thought, this must be the space goat farts entity. And then later on, of course, I realized, if when the giant mutant space goats do get here, that we have to acknowledge that that's how they travel from star system to star system, is using Newton's second law of for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So they sort of swim around to the direction they want to go and let loose.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I always wondered.
That's great.
So my producer's saying we need to take a small break. So we're going to take a small break, Cliff, and then we'll come back and we're going to talk a little bit about end of the world. We have questions about New Madrid fall going on, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how do you see the next 3 months. We'll be back in about 2 minutes, Mr. High. We're on RadioRichandFriends.com with Cliff High, HalfPastHuman.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Paranormal Adventure Radio on RadioRichandFriends.com with Nick and Beth. We're lucky enough to have Cliff High from HalfPastHuman.com with us on the air. Well, thanks for holding on.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
So let's get down to the meat and bones here. Everyone wants to know what's going to happen the next 3 months according to your predictions, your WebBot predictions.
I don't know that the stuff that's going to happen over the next 3 months is as pertinent as what happens at the latter half. In other words, of the next 90 days, the next 45 are pretty much as we've seen the last few, last 18 or 20 days. But then around March 25th, we hit another one of these areas where we dive into release language. This last bit with the missile launch off the coast of California, the missile launch off the San Padre Island in Texas, the missiles off of the coast of New York, the downing of the airplane in Alaska, the WikiLeaks release, as well as all kinds of other weird and spooky stuff, was started on November 14th. Actually, it was probably the 8th, I think, with the missile launch. But in any event, that 63 days was release language. So the whole period there with WikiLeaks and all of that, that's that kind of feeling we're going to go back into starting in March, and it'll run all the way to October.
Okay.
So really the next 90 days, it's going to be like, more revolution, more disruption. That same global revolution theme is going to continue. We're still looking at a lot more floods. The alien wars is still going on, although it's not really going to heat up again until we're back into that release period in March to begin with. So it's a building tension period, but as nasty as the time is now with everybody getting emotionally whipped up about the Egyptian and these other revolutions, this is sort of a respite. We need to be able to take deep breaths here and calm down a bit, because we got some release language coming up again.
I had an email earlier today from Steve, and Steve had a particular question about Gulf winds from the Gulf of Mexico, and if they will be affecting the Kansas City area.
I don't know how far up it'll go. We're faced with conflicting. In our data set, we had this really descriptive set of details that pointed out a very large valley situation that would funnel up nasty winds from the Gulf and cause all kinds of problems, health problems, immediate respiratory ills, that sort of thing. And it would be such that it would rise to the level of visibility within the mainstream media. This may be what we call a broad meme, where it's wider than we originally anticipated, and thus it may be more than one incident of such. And the other issue now is that we've got this near ice age thing going on, where we've got the Arctic blast coming on over on that half of the Rockies, pushing against any inflow up from the Gulf.
Yes.
So if it's going to occur, at this point, I personally, just looking at what's going on, would tend to think that it would not go that far, that would be looking at a lot more smaller incidents that would fill out the language as opposed to one large one, which would be very large incident to go that far. Make sense?
It does. You know, when I think of winds coming up from the Gulf at this time of the year, I'm in emergency management, I'm a volunteer, and I think of tornadoes and very heavy, severe thunderstorms and that type of activity. So that's why I thought Steve's question was so interesting.
And I got another question from email today about the New Madrid Fault. Is there any upcoming language about earthquakes and from the New Madrid Fault line and the Boot Hill of Missouri?
There's the issue is we have tons of information for some nasty earthquakes. We have to acknowledge that this is supported by reality. Since the year 2000, we've had, like, I don't know what it was, 150,000% increase in very large earthquakes over the norm. In other words, we shouldn't be having them at anywhere near the rate we are. We've had perhaps, if we want to define it as normal, in a long stretch, but from the year 2000, we've had maybe 50 years worth of earthquakes. In some locations, we get 50 years worth of earthquakes in a matter of weeks now. So everything is decidedly off. The curious factor, of course, is the government is preparing for a New Madrid release that they suspect will cause all kinds of damage. And if I lived in that area, I would sure start looking at my local buildings that I had to go in and out of, and my traffic patterns and how I would be impacted when it occurs. The issue for us is that it will occur probably fairly rapidly because the overall quakiness, if you will, of the whole planet is raised so high that we're now entering into a period of more probability than possibility. In other words, in 1972, there was a possibility that New Madrid might release with a significant earthquake. Now, however, there is a probability that it might do so, and that probability is high enough that that somebody somewhere has gotten off their butt in the government, and they're actually putting energy towards the eventuality of it occurring, and they're preparing for that eventuality post-haste. So they're not necessarily trying to say that it's going to occur quickly, but they want to be ready real quick just in case it does, that sort of thing. That's never a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, it never is.